If there was just one bass sound that could instantly make your DNB tracks 10 times better, wouldn't you want to master it? After creating electronic music for over 20 years, I've discovered a filthy bass sound that makes your music absolutely addictive. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what that bass sound is and how you can easily recreate it for yourself. Today, we're diving into the iconic Reese bass, the #1 sound I recommend every new producer learns how to create. It's incredibly versatile, working beautifully across every subgenre of drum and bass. There are several methods to create a Reese, but let's start with the classic and most fundamental approach, by detuning waveforms.
For this demonstration, I'm using Phase Plant, a fantastic semi-modular synthesizer, which is my personal favorite. But don't worry, you can follow along with any synth you prefer. These techniques apply universally. Here's what we want to try and achieve. Right now, I'm using a single sine wave. Now if I add a second oscillator slightly detuned from the first, you hear that pulsing rhythmic movement. Well, this is the effect that we want to create with our Reese. The great thing is you can achieve this effect with any two waveforms that are the same. So, how can you easily create a Reese bass that sounds good in your own productions? Let's build a better sounding Reese step by step. Let's start with two sawtooth waves, and we drop them down 2 octaves to get that deep bassy tone. So we're going to detune these slightly apart. We're going to do one wave up 20 cents. And one down 20 cents. This speeds up when we play higher up the keyboard. Next, let's soften the harshness by adding a simple low-pass filter. This smooths out the higher parts of your sound, making it sound warmer and more mellow. Finally, let's reintroduce some bite and character by adding in a touch of distortion after the filter. This brings back some higher frequencies we lost with the filter, resulting in a rich and tasty Reese. Because the distortion is after this filter, listen to how the filter affects the sound when we open and close it. And there you have it, a classic foundational Reese bass.
Now let's dive into another method, one with a funny name but serious results: the poop saw. Essentially, this is a sawtooth wave with added noise for extra crunch and grit. By introducing noise, we instantly get richer, dirtier textures with plenty of high frequencies to play with.
Here's how we're going to recreate it step by step. First, we're going to start with a simple sawtooth wave. Next, we'll introduce some noise, but instead of just layering noise on top, we're going to use a technique called frequency modulation, or FM. Don't worry, FM just means we're using one waveform, the noise, to modulate or add detail to another waveform, our sawtooth. You'll be able to see this shortly. Think of it like sprinkling seasoning onto food. It adds flavour and complexity. So let's add noise, and I'm going to make sure it's not actually going out to our output. And this output control can be linked to the phase here to create FM. And you'll be able to see, as I add it, our original waveform gets much more noisy. We only want to add a little bit. Now let's turn this noisy saw into a proper Reese bass using another handy tool called Unison. Unison is a fantastic feature that creates multiple detuned copies of your waveform, all from just one oscillator. Turn the Unison on and let's set it to 2. And we can use the detune setting just here. Finally, let's shape the sound further by adding filtering and distortion effects, just like we did previously. This will tame the harshness and bring out more character. Here's how it can sound fully processed.
So far, we've created classic Reese textures using detuned waveforms. But there's a catch. Detuning alone doesn't give precise control over that pulsing, morphing movement. What if you want to perfectly control the speed, intensity, and feel of that pulse?
Listen carefully to this sound. You notice how the texture smoothly shifts and morphs, evolving in a controlled and deliberate way. Well, what's going on here? This is called wavetable synthesis, and we can use it in an interesting way to make a Reese. Instead of simply detuning waves, we're actually smoothly morphing between different wave shapes while maintaining the same note. This lets us precisely control the movement and speed of that pulsing texture. I can even automate this so we get some movement to this sound happening automatically. So now you've heard wavetable synthesis in action, how can you do this for yourself? So first, let's load up a wavetable. I'm going to open up this one here. I'm going to go to Synth and Unisonic. Next, we want to be able to automatically move through these wave shapes. To do this, we'll use something called an LFO. If you're new to this, think of an LFO as a slow automatic hand turning a knob that controls a setting back and forth. By connecting this LFO to the wavetable position, we can create that smooth, controlled morphing effect that you heard earlier. So let me just add an LFO. Now if I connect this to the wavetable position. Finally, let's add one more trick. So I'm going to use this controller here to control the speed of this LFO. So I've got more direct control over exactly how fast that morphing happens. Let's finish this off by adding some unison, and we can crank the voices up on this one if we want. Adding some filters, reverb, distortion, and you can control the speed of the wobble on different notes.
Finally, let's take everything we've learnt so far and crank it all the way up to 11. Maybe you've heard those huge, gnarly bass sounds in your favourite electronic tracks and wondered, how do they get that intense movement and energy? Well, you're about to find out. Let's make some Neruobass. A Neruobass is basically a bass sound packed with tons of movement and character. Imagine your Reese bass, but on steroids. By creatively stacking filters, distortion, and spatial effects, we can transform a simple bass into something swirling, wobbling, and truly epic. First, we'll start with that poop saw we built from before. Basically a noisy sawtooth wave. Before I move to the next part, here are 2 quick sound design rules to remember clearly. Filters remove frequencies from your sound, and distortion adds new frequencies back into your sound.
So let me show you how this works practically. First, I'll add a simple low-pass filter. Listen carefully. When I lower the cutoff frequency, notice how we lose the higher frequencies, making the sound darker and smoother. Now watch what happens when I add distortion right after the filter. Suddenly, new harmonics pop back out, bringing back brightness and excitement back into our sound. Because distortion adds frequencies back in, it interacts beautifully with our filter's movements, creating interesting textures. Here's the magic. We can repeat this process multiple times, stacking different filters and distortions to build incredibly complex, evolving sounds. Let's modulate our filter cutoff with an LFO. Remember, an LFO is like an automatic knob turner. Because our filter affects the sound before the distortion, changing the filter's movement directly influences the character of the distortion afterwards, making it sound even more alive and dynamic. I'm going to add in another EQ now, which is a little bit like a filter, but with a different shape that we can then also control with another LFO, moving at a different speed. This can give us a bit of a throaty, interesting movement. Now let's add some other spatial effects like a flanger. We can keep on building upon this by adding more effects and layers. I'm going to add some more distortion. Try some reverb. You can see by stacking loads of different effects with lots of different modulation, you end up with some really interesting and varied sounds. Now listen to what we've created, a powerful, evolving Neruobass sound, packed with movement, texture, and personality. A handy cheat sheet for figuring out how to make Neruobass is to follow this little diagram here, and you can just keep adding and experimenting with different stacks of effects. Here are some examples of other Neruobasses I've created.
So now you've got 4 new methods for creating juicy Reese basses. And although that's a great start, the Reese bass alone isn't going to make your track stand out from the crowd. That's why you need to know the 6 most essential drum bass sounds that will take your production to the next level. I'll show you how to make them all in this video, so please click here to turbocharge your next track.